Most people who have sat for one of the CFA exams have had a friend or a member of their family tell them, hey, you're smart, you're going to be just fine. Those comments are meant to be helpful and encouraging, and they come from a good place. But the reality is that unless you're taking the level 3 exam, statistically speaking, you're not going to be fine because levels 1 and 2 hold a lower than 50% pass rate. So you need to do a few things right in the final couple weeks before the exam to give yourself the best chance possible of passing, and I'm going to tell you what they are. In the final weeks before any CFA exam, you need to be making a big shift to what you do during that period of time versus what you've been doing during the bulk of your study. You need to be doing 3 specific things: taking practice exams, memorizing formulas, and then giving yourself a break. And I know you've been doing a couple of those. Hopefully you haven't been doing too much of the third over the past few or 6 months before the exam. One of the most common questions you'll see in the forums online in relation to practice exams is how many someone should take. I can tell you I did about 15 or so before each of the levels, and I probably still could have done a little bit more. It is extremely important to allocate enough study time for yourself to be able to take as many practice exams as you can. Of course, the exams are very important for giving you additional review of the questions, but they also force a sort of change of thinking in how you've maybe been either studying for or reviewing concepts and questions in the past. They force you to think like if you were in the exam room and you had to answer those questions under certain time constraints, which admittedly is a little bit different process. I passed all the exams without failing any, and I'm telling you that taking as many practice exams as I could in the final few weeks or couple months before the exam was the second most important factor in my ability to be able to pass. People have asked me on this channel or online, hey AJ, where can I get access to this many practice exams? The Institute only provides 2 or 3. That's true. If you have a test prep provider, you can get another 2 or 3 from them. But then most notably, there are Google Drives all over the place where people have saved PDFs of many years worth of practice exams that the Institute used to post on their website, and they just no longer save it online, but is totally compliant for you to get access to practice old questions. I've talked about it before, but when you're doing several year old practice exams, make sure that you're also looking at a guide to show you which questions from that practice exam are no longer relevant, right? That material that those questions come from is no longer a part of the CFA curriculum. And I think IFT probably has the best guide out there that I've seen that covers which questions from prior exams are no longer in the material. It's not a bad thing to do additional questions that you won't be tested on in the future, but it's not the most efficient use of time. You could have used that time studying for a question that could potentially be coming up on the CFA exam that you're about to take. I never treated them as a complete mock exam, meaning taking 3 hours and then a 1 hour lunch and then 3 hours to complete all the sections. You can do this different ways. Personally, I would just run through like 10 or 20 questions and do them at exam speed, then go back and review those answers, learn from those questions, and then re-answer the same ones, make sure I knew them, and then I would move on. So I did treat them a little bit more like practice questions, but it's still just a different atmosphere, I guess, when you're sitting alone at your desk, taking what you know is a practice exam and what may look very similar to what you're going to be hopefully taking and passing here in your near future. There are other people of the opinion that you absolutely need to treat them exactly like a full mock exam. I'm not saying that'd be a bad thing to do. I just think it wasn't the most efficient for the way that my brain learned. So maybe after a few, you'll figure out what you feel best doing. Just make sure you're doing all those questions and you're learning the material. A very notable point here, though, is that Kaplan usually offers a live mock exam that I think a lot of people can get access to for free. I got it for free because my local CFA society sponsored the members of that society in taking this. When the exams were still once per year, this live mock was usually 2 Saturdays before the real exam. That schedule could have changed a bit now that the exams are happening a little more frequently with the new computer-based testing schedule, but either way, certainly check to see if a Kaplan live mock is available in your area. I think it definitely helped me out. If you do take one of those live mocks from Kaplan, don't put too much weight on that score because they make it much more difficult than the real exam. I can tell you from experience. I did one of these live mocks all 3 levels, and I think each time I scored around a 50%, whereas, you know, on the real exam I was at least 70, maybe 68, 70%. So it's much more difficult than the real thing. I think it's meant to really beat you down mentally and force you to think you have to study as much as possible in the last couple weeks, which can be a good thing. In the last 3 days, I want you only memorizing formulas. I've talked about this as the secret to passing the CFA exams, and I definitely believe it is. You either need one of the test prep providers' formula guides, but if you didn't pay for one of those programs, hopefully you've noted down on the most important, or actually most of the formulas in your notes as you went through the material on your own, because you want to put all those formulas in one list and write them all over and over and over and pound them into your head as much as you can for like 60 hours straight. Especially for the level 1 exam, so many of those questions are going to be real quick algebra type equations equations where it's going to give you 3 variables, 2 of them are going to be relevant, and as long as you memorize the quick little formula, either in corporate finance, economics, fixed income, whatever it is, where there's a numerator and a denominator, you just got to know which numbers go where, do a quick division problem, and you have your answer. Those are the easiest questions in the world if you've memorized the formulas, and they're the hardest questions in the world if you haven't. So definitely memorize all the formulas you've used in all the questions, practice questions and mock questions, and CFA questions, blue box questions, EOCs, whatever, to answer them, because all that material is fair game and all those formulas are fair game to come up on the exam. You need to know them. And then in the last 24 hours, maybe 48 hours, I think you should take them off. I think you need to enjoy this period of time. If you've studied enough, it can be fun to recognize the fact that you're at a point in your life that you'll probably never be at again, especially if you're taking the level 3 exam, because you have such a huge amount of information stuffed into your brain to be able to pass this thing that it's really remarkable. You've kind of maximized, in my opinion, what the human mind is capable of remembering for one sitting, and I always thought it was just a cool thing to be in that state. If you can appreciate that and also appreciate the fact that all your studying is behind you, it's really uplifting and encouraging, motivational. I was super excited at this. It's really uplifting, encouraging, motivational, whatever. I was always really excited in these final 24, 48 hours, especially because I was relaxing, playing golf, go to a movie, video games, whatever. I would not think about CFA material. I think it's super important to let your brain take a rest. There's such a huge volume of content for all 3 of these exams that spending the last 12 to 24 hours cramming is not going to help you that much. You might get 1 or 2 extra questions worth of content into your brain. Whereas if you let yourself rest so that you can go into the exam room at kind of tip-top mental conditions, I think you'll be able to improve your state of thinking enough to help you out with much more than 1 to 2 questions that you could have otherwise picked up on had you been cramming those last 24 hours. It can be extremely difficult to try to relax during this time. Trust me, I know. But all I can tell you is that the more relaxed that you can become, the better I think you're going to do. You're also kind of going to be able to prepare yourself to relax during the exam or in the hours before the exam, because that could be even more stressful than the day before. If you take the entire day before off, you'll have a little bit of practice at being relaxed up into the exam. The morning of the exam, I always felt like I was about to go to battle. You know, you've prepared for so long for this thing. You're at peak mental state. It's like, you know, if you were training for a marathon for 3 years and you're about to go run that marathon, and you've done this all on your own. You've put in the work, all the hours, all the sacrifice and skipping friends and family events. You've grinded through questions you couldn't figure out, and you've gotten yourself to this place where you have a good chance of being able to pass this exam, especially if you did a ton of mocks, 10, 15, 20 mocks in the last month, and especially if you memorized all the formulas in the last couple days. You're going to boost your chances way more than you could have using any other strategy in the last period of time here. So I think you want to be excited about that and encouraged about that, and all those things are going to work together to build a really strong mental state to make you feel good and think smart. When I went to take the level 2 exam, it was only the second time in my life I had been to that convention center where the exam was held, which was about 2 hours from where I lived at the time, and I felt like I was home. The only other time I was there was to take level 1. I was only there for, 9-10 hours throughout the course of the day, but I felt so comfortable there. I felt like I was the king of the building. I felt like I was going to kill the exam. I don't want to make this all about self-confidence, because it's not. You're going to be worried, you're going to be nervous, and all that exists too. If you've really optimized these last few weeks before taking the exam, or if you're watching this video and you have a few weeks before taking them, know that your mental state on that exam day is going to be far better if you follow some of the tips that I've laid out here in whichever way, works best for your situation and your brain and how you learn, than if you had just blindly went into this and did a bunch more EOC questions. Hey, what's up?
Hey, what's up? Status on tree.
They, let's see, I called her around noon. So look, I'd like to take a second and just give you a little personal message here. I think it is so cool what you have committed yourself to learning and trying to achieve with this. Best of luck to you. I wish everyone that studies hard could pass, and that no one who studies hard doesn't pass. That's not the case, though. Some people study less and pass because they're super smart, super high IQ. And then there are people who study a ton and end up not passing, and I don't love to hear about any of that stuff. So no, I'm not going to tell you that you're going to be fine like your parents will tell you or your wife or friends will tell you, because we know that that isn't true, and I don't want to lie to you. I just want to give you the best advice and the most encouragement that I can. I respect you so much. Every other charter holder or anyone who's been through a handful of these exams and hasn't been able to pass respects you so much for what you're doing. 5 years later, I still see it as the biggest undertaking I went through in my life and the biggest achievement. So just know you're right in the middle of that. a little part of me wishes I could go back and do some of it again, maybe just like level 3 or something. I definitely wouldn't if I had the choice, but a little part of me. So try to enjoy it for whatever it's worth. Best of luck to you. If you enjoyed this video or anything else on the channel, I'll ask that you like this video, subscribe. Both of those things really help me out and I appreciate them. As always, thanks for watching.